Good morning, just everybody. Wendy McChrystal from the Mental Wealth Company. So I've got reversing sensors on my modern VW car. I use them all the time. When I go and jump in my 1975 split-screen camper van and reverse into a wall, sometimes I hit it because we've become used to using the technology, so something called negative skill transfer. How are we going to manage that while we're transitioning where some of our equipment has the technology and some doesn't for the people that we're going to be asking to use it?
As it was my analogy, I'll kick off. Without a doubt, that's a risk for sure, and I absolutely get where you're coming from. One of the struggles, as I mentioned, we've had is we've got an awful lot of equipment that's on the network. We can't replace it on any short cycle. So the fact that I've got 4 brand new ones doesn't negate the fact that I've got 15, 16 that haven't got the equipment on it or didn't have the equipment on it. I think retrofit's going to be part of that. So that's an approach we are taking. But you're right, an operator might be in my equipment one weekend and someone else's the next weekend, and that is a hazard we are going to have to think about. I don't have a silver bullet, but I do think it links to the way we brief on site and every aspect of setting people to work safely. I gave you 2 use cases out of 20 examples, and that's our best practice rather than just the standard that you'd expect. Effective briefing of the risks and hazards on site is going to be a big part of that, and continuing to focus, as Lindsay said, and for me, best presentation of the day, the focus on behaviours is such an important part of this. I came from the yellow plant industry into rail, and I was used to no one being anywhere near a piece of plant. It was just standard practice. You went nowhere near plant when it was in operation. And I came onto site, and the first thing I saw was everyone gathered around a piece of plant. And every time I challenged, they were like, you can't do anything about it. We're working in very confined areas. We need to pass the plant, otherwise we can't do the work. So there's a bit about that behaviour change. So technology isn't the only answer. It's combined with behaviour change, I think.
Yeah. Anyone else want to have a go at that before we any questions? It is working, yeah.
I think there's 2 things there. One, you can keep operators on specific sets of plant, so they're used to the technology or lack of technology fitted to that. Easier said than done when you've got a big fleet and lots of operators, but that's one way of doing it. I think the second one is to bring tended and geofencing back in. It's one of the big advantages that I've seen in the use of geofencing is the ability to go to further levels. So we have possessions and possession management, we have worksite and worksite management, but we don't then delineate past that point. Geofencing we can split work sites up into several areas. So if an operator forgets the plant they're using and they're reversing, say, towards people, we'll set up a work area and the operator will get a warning that they need to stop because they're leaving that safe area. So there's a couple of things that I would suggest we could look at.
Thank you. Any other questions from, so one at the front? Anybody else? Okay. Gentleman at the front.
Just the geofencing. Whose technology is that? Is that your own?
No, in that case, it's tended. So we work very closely with RSS. They're working very closely with CRSA, and they're curating tended's deployment onto the rail network.
I'll just clarify that.
I was going to say, I think there's a number of organisations exhibiting at Rail Live that provide. I'm not going to say they're all the same or all one better than the others, but there's a few.
But in terms of geofencing in the application that's been described, there's 2 companies, Tended and OnWave. They're the approved companies that provide that service. Yes, there's two companies.
Sorry, Andy. Thank you. Any other questions? If not, we'll start to wrap things up. I'm conscious it's quite warm in here now. Okay, in which case, can I thank all our speakers from this morning's sessions. I think it's been a really quick canter through lots of different aspects of that people-plant interface, which is so important on the railway, from the smaller things that we perhaps take a little bit for granted, like forklift trucks, thank you, Andy, right the way through to the really big earth-moving equipment and obviously the specialist vehicles that we have on the railway. And the work that ISLG does, what the RPA do, absolutely critical in helping to keep all of us safe. A couple of last messages from me, if I can just, I can't see the screen, so apologies, I'm going to stand in front of you. So we have got a session this afternoon from a Rail Safety Week conference perspective. This afternoon's session is going to focus more around occupational and mental health. So if you're interested in that subject, please do drop by again and listen to some of our speakers this afternoon. We also, and I think the Rail Minister mentioned it on the video this morning, we run a children's competition throughout Rail Safety Week and for several weeks beyond now. All the information for that is on the Rail Safety Week website. There are 3 competitions for different age groups, colouring competitions for the younger ones, designer station for the slightly older ones, with some really fantastic prizes. If you've got kids of your own, grandkids, nephews, nieces, children next door, please help spread the word. They can download the colouring competitions from the website. So please do try and get some of the children involved to get them thinking about safety on the railway. If you've got links to schools, again, get that information into the schools, please, so that the schools can get their children doing this in the school classroom. So thank you to our partners for Rail Safety Week this year. Rail Live, Rail is our primary sponsor, partner for Rail Safety Week this year. We've also got support from the Department for Transport and from RSSB. So without that support, we couldn't do these sorts of conferences and all some of the other things that we do from a Rail Safety Week perspective. But remembering Rail Safety Week is about all of you as well. And finally, thank you very much for joining us this morning in what has been a very hot, warm tent. Enjoy the rest of Rail Live. There's lots to see, and have a safe journey home. But thank you very much for your attention this morning.